Shattering Glass Chapter 22. I always hated that whole bunch of boys, the glass kid included. A batch of spoiled little shits. Like, I didn't know the one named Bobster called me the goulash ghoul. If it wouldn't have gotten me fired, he'd have had a laxative chaser in his stew. Every one of them should have had a few ass kickings when they were little, and nothing like this would have happened. Martha McDaniel, Brazos Vale cafeteria worker. My New Year's Eve date with Debbie clinched the deal. A bunch of us went to the jetties to shoot fireworks. Simon appeared alone. Coop, Bobster, and assorted others asked about Rana. I told them we broke up and nothing else. Who knew what Debbie whispered into any ear that got near her mouth? All I could think about was Ron. Where was she? Was she thinking of me? New Year's Day was long and boring. When I called Coop at about 7 that night, I couldn't stand my own company. I had all the personal charm of a pint of snot. Mr. Cooper answered the phone and told me Coop had left with some lardass in a hotshot car. We gathered in the commons before school the next day with the usual post-holidays grumping and grousing. The doors to the snack bar were still closed, but about the time I found Rob and the others, the wicked witch of the lunch line put the keys in the door and pushed them open. And she was eyeball to eyeball with a cow. In the cafeteria. A cow. A fright-maddened cow. The cafeteria lady of our nightmares uttered something between a squeak and a squawk. The cow stamped. The woman let loose a full-powered screech, and the cow charged. The cafeteria lady tumbled head over asshole as the cow thundered past. Tables and books flew airborne, then crashed, scattering homework, purses, jackets, and people across the commons. Those who weren't fleeing from Bossy's path were doubled up in laughter. Suddenly, Glass grabbed Bobster's jacket and darted to the cow. He flapped the jacket like a roly-poly matador, yelling, "Tostado! Tostado!" He whirled in a clumsy pirouette. The cow, obviously befuddled by this bizarre sight, stopped her crazed rush, then stood, dejected, her nostrils flaring with each labored breath. Glass shouted to a knot of boys wearing navy blue corduroy FFA jackets. "One of you goat ropers come over here and show us your stuff. Hog-tie this doggy." John Allen Dixon loped forward, pulling off his belt. He looped it over the cow's neck, making a halter of sorts, and led the traumatized animal to the door. "What'll I do with her?" "Grill over mesquite, marinating frequently," Simon ordered. We laughed until we were breathless and teary-eyed. Just as Deputy Dog strode in, demanding, "Where did this cow come from?" a message flashed across the electronic marquee that B-Vale has nicknamed Fred. In caps it read, "Cow? What cow?" Then, "Happy Moo Year, everyone." Deputy turned a rich but mottled purple. He stormed from the commons, muttering about cattle rustling and lynchings. The place went berserk. "Happy Moo Year" was shouted again and again amid the hoots and howls of laughter. Rob wasn't laughing. His face was hard lines and sharp angles as he glared at Simon, who had resumed his matador routine. Glass paused in his twirls and whirls, panting, scanning the crowd, searching. He caught sight of Rob and grinned with a thumbs-up signal. The veins in Rob's temple throbbed visibly, and he spun on one heel and strode away. But the fun wasn't over. 6 armadillos chased squealing girls from a restroom just before lunch. Deputy Dog, returning from his daily cruise around the parking lot in his single-handed war against parking decal transgressors, was greeted by 24 hamsters that bolted from his desk drawer. The hamsters, probably scared hollow by the deputy's croaking cries, left their regards in tiny pellets all over his office. No one doubted the perpetrator of these animal antics. Glass's back was pounded until it was in a perpetual wheeze. In a few short months, he had been parlayed from hated to tolerated to accepted, and now he was practically revered. Rob sat mute at the lunch table, his expression unreadable as a parade of well-wishers high-fived Glass. Finally, Rob stood. "Young, Bobster, Coop, Meet me in my office after school. He honed in on Simon. You too. Then he pushed his tray across the table. Put that away from me, Glass. Simon gaped in surprise, but Rob's face must have prevented him from uttering a word of refusal. Sure, Rob, why not? Rob left, not acknowledging him. We watched in uncomfortable silence. The equipment room was open when Bobster and I got there. Rob sat on stacked tumbling mats, his fingers gripping the mats at each side of his thighs. Coop sprawled on the floor, a volleyball tucked under his head like a pillow. Pull up a mat and sit down. Rob's voice was smooth and controlled. We did. I sat with my back against a big chalkboard, my arms resting on my raised knees. Bobster stretched out on his side and toyed with a stand of baseball bats. I popped my knuckles. Nervous? Rob asked. I feel like I've been called to the principal's office. Relax. You did what I asked. Just then a shadow filled the doorway. Close the door behind you, Glass. Simon reached behind him and drew the door shut without turning around. The lights weren't on in the tiny room, and the only illumination shot through a narrow rectangular window in the closed closet, falling in a thin shaft across Rob's face. Sit down, Simon. I'd rather stand if you don't mind. But I do mind, Glass. A lot. Sit. Simon sat. Above us, Rob sat like some Aztec deity. I want to get something squared away here, so we don't have any more misunderstandings. Bobster pulled a wooden baseball bat from the stand and thumped it against the padded mat. Thud, thud, thud. Simon is going to be elected class favorite. It was my idea, my game plan. I want it to stay that way. The muffled thumping of the bat was the only response. Thud, thud, thud. The even, unceasing rhythm made me tense and jumpy. Bob, can you quit that? My voice jangled, sharp-edged against the smooth shadows. Bob dropped the bat. It rolled off the mat and clattered on the concrete floor. Sorry. Since the night of the ring, Bob had lacked his former bluster. I felt bad for snapping at him. But the cow was funny. Coop's voice rolled out, slow and firm. What's the problem? Timing, Rob answered. I don't get it, Rob, Simon wheezed. You're the one who wanted me to be funny. You said that was my in, like Coop and football and Young. Rob cut him off. You don't see the whole picture. The shaft of light threw eerie shadows on Rob's face as he surveyed us. He locked on Simon. In September and October, hell, even up to Christmas, we needed funny. As long as the school was already laughing at you, it wasn't such a big leap for them to laugh with you. I stretched my legs and my foot clipped a loose bat. It rolled too far across the concrete. The floor must be uneven, I thought. You remember, don't you, Simon? I knew how to make people accept you, didn't I? Sure, Rob. Then why the fuck do you think you can branch out on your own? No answer. I'm not sure anyone breathed. Rob hung his head, shook it slightly, and smoothed his voice. Simon, I don't like to hurt your feelings, but you've lost sight of who you really are, and that's lousing things up. Rob's words wounded through the dim room. Being funny was a first step. It got you noticed, got you accepted. But class favorite says you have respect. Nobody laughs at class favorite. Rob paused, slid off the mats, and rested his hands on his hips. We have to move on now. Make you someone more, he sighed, desirable. You've got to come across as somebody who gets the girl at the end of the movie. I get it, Rob. I thought the cow thing was, well, I thought you'd like it, but you were wrong. Yeah, I was wrong. Is that clear with the rest of you? Hail Hitler, I whispered. We waited, the seconds ticking almost audibly, then Rob chuckled. Leave it to you, Young, to get me off my high horse. Sorry, guys, I guess I'm going a little overboard. He turned up his palms. It's just that we've got this thing so close to happening, and I don't want to blow it now. So humor me, and that way I'll only have myself to blame. He leaned against the stacked mats and crossed his arms loosely over his chest. Now that we've settled that, let's have a little strategy session. What's our next step? Bobster retrieved the bat and resumed thumping. No ideas? Rob asked. Thud, thud, thud. Well, if Simon gets the girl at the end of the movie, we gotta find a girl, Bobster offered. Good thinking, Rob said. Any suggestions? Thud, thud, thud. Dallas Alice is out. Her parents put her in one of those loony schools so they can cure her advanced cluelessness, I said. Thud, thud, thud. Get serious. Simon needs a romance with somebody who is well liked, someone likely to be nominated for class favorite herself. Blair? Coop asked. I think you'd see the Pope in a thong before Blair Cruz would go out with me, Simon said. Blair would be good to help promote a romance, but I don't think she's right for Simon. Rob rubbed his chin, musing. Rana? Simon whispered the name. Thud, thud, thud. Yeah, Ron would be perfect, Rob said. Of course, only if that's okay with you, Young. What's the status on you two? We don't have a status. Then you don't mind if Simon asks her out. Not trusting my voice, I simply grunted. It passed for a yes. Thud, thud, thud. Good then, it's settled. Simon, you and I need to find a way to make you Rana Perry's hero. Simon rubbed his hands against his thighs. Young, are you sure you're all right with this? Do you always have to have permission from someone? Does somebody have to tell you what to do? My voice was loud and it echoed off the walls, into my own ears.